All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Jared O'Levin Green with my partner, Coach 67 Sports TV. This is the Southern Ballers Show, football and conversation. Man. Uh, uh, SWAC championship was basically what we thought it was, but Coach 67 Sports TV is gonna go in today. Being a Southern alumni, being a Southern fan. Um, he's just gonna go in today, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, but first of all, I want to say shout out to the mighty LDBC coach. How's everything going? How you feeling?
Man, aside from the SWAC championship game, I'm blessed and highly favored, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Same here. Can't complain about anything. Hope everybody's having a blessed Sunday. Hey, my brother Brent Fox is joining us. How you doing today, Brent?
I'm doing all right, brother. Hope you're doing well too.
I'm blessed. I can't complain about anything, my brother. Um, First of all, we're just going to start off basically talking about the SWAC championship. Southern and Jackson State played yesterday, and Coach 67 is going to give his basically recap my thoughts on it, his thoughts on it, and also my thoughts. And also, we're going to save what's tearing up these YouTube streets. Coach Prime leaving Jackson State for those Colorado Buffs. So
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna save the best for last.
All
And
righty.
man, Black did a uh Instagram live uh going in on it, and I missed it. But Coach, if you have time when we do get to that point, can you share with us? Because I agree a lot with Black had to say. Um, but anyway, Coach, get the cooking on the SWAC championship.
Well, I'm not one of these type of people to say I told you so, but in this particular instance, I told you so. I've been
Mm-mm.
saying literally the entire season that Glendon Bubba McDaniel gives Southern University the best opportunity to win week in and week out. And in addition to that, he gives Southern, more importantly, he gives Southern the best opportunity to win the SWAC championship game. You could go to Coach 67 Sports TV on YouTube, and you could go to my YouTube channel. You could check out the videos. Leading up to the game, I have multiple videos saying that even if you look at our show last week, you know, on this channel last week, I said, my brother asked me, he said, Coach, what would you do if you was Coach Dooley? And I specifically said it. I said, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I said I would not start B. Sean McCray. I would start Glendon Bubba McDaniel because he gives you the best opportunity to win. I said last year when Jackson State came to A.W. Mumford Stadium, Pete Richardson Field, I said he pushed Jackson State to the limit. I said they almost won that game. Shador Sanders had to take Jackson State down the field on the last Jackson State the last drive of the game. They won the game. And Southern got the ball back. Glendon Bubba McDaniel, he drove Southern to the plus side of the field. I think he got Southern to like maybe the plus 35 to plus 30. The drive stalled out and they lost. After the game, Jackson State players, they planted the J uh, on midfield, and it agitated Southern players, especially all those senior Southern had at the time, and they started fighting after the game. It probably was the best game Southern had the entire season. If it might have been the best white game of the entire season. And they started fighting after the game, and it marred the game. It gave the game a black eye. Coach Prime, he apologized, for his players doing that because he thought it was disrespectful as a Southern fan and as the coach myself, my outlook and standpoint was, hey, if you hold on to win that game, you don't have to worry about them planting that flag at midfield or your home stadium. So that was my outlook. And then you spin it forward to early this year, pretty much no matter how well or how poorly B. Sean McCray played, basically Coach Dooley stuck with him. No matter how poorly he played against Texas Southern, they lost that game 24-0. And they played against Jackson State in the Boombox Classic earlier this year. He played poorly in that game. They lost 35-0. And I'm in both of those instances, I've been saying it on this channel, on my channel, that he shouldn't be starting. He's a glorified running back playing quarterback, and that Glendon Bubba McDaniel gives Southern University the best opportunity to win. So spinning forward to yesterday's SWAC championship game, and I said it going into the game that he's going to stick with B. Sean McCray because he has basically stuck with him the entire season. So Southern wins the opening kickoff. They get the ball first. He goes out. Southern goes 3 and out. They punt the ball to Jackson State. Shador drives them down the field. Jackson State kicks a field goal. Then, because Jay Good, he pointed out last week, Harold Blood. And from a Glendon Bubba McDaniel standpoint, at the beginning of last season, he was essentially in the same position. Whereas the exact same thing B. Sean McCray is now, Ladarius Skelton was the same thing then. Just like Glendon Bubba McDaniel is a grad senior now, Ladarius Skelton was the same thing then. So Ladarius Skelton was a glorified running back playing quarterback. And John Lampley was a pure pocket passer. But the thing about it, he wasn't athletic enough when teams blitzing to get out the way. And Glendon Bubba McDaniel was the best of both worlds. He was a pure pocket passer, but if necessary, he could take off and run. So when they put Harold Blood in the game, we know Jackson State, they like to load up the box and they like to blitz. The first time they blitzed Harold Blood, he fumbled, and Jackson State eventually scored. So now they're down 10-0. Then they put B. Sean McCray back in the game. He threw a pick 6. He stick with B. Sean McCray. He fumbled. Now by this point, Southern is down 26-0. Finally, now he puts Glendon Bubba McDaniel in the game. And I'm like, man, it's like you put him in a no-win situation. But nevertheless, Glendon Bubba McDaniel plays an excellent game. His entire time at Southern, I think the game he played yesterday was the best I've seen him play. Last year against Alcorn State, I think he had an A performance. Yesterday, I would say he had an A+ performance. He reminded me a lot of Eric Randall, one of Southern old quarterbacks from the mid-90s. He led Southern to 2 SWAC championships. Basically, the way Glendon Bubba McDaniel played yesterday, he played that way. Those 2 seasons they won SWAC championships. He was a pocket passer that could run. He was athletic. His younger brother ended up eventually, Marcus Randall, he ended up playing for LSU. If anyone knows about the Bluegrass Miracle, well, he was a quarterback that threw that pass to Devery Henderson, who eventually ended up playing for the Saints. So Glendon Bubba McDaniel, he did an excellent job throwing the ball because B. Sean McCray, like I said, he's a good athlete, but he's a glorified running back playing quarterback. And Harold Blood is a pocket passer, but he's not athletic enough to get away from the blitz. So when Jackson State did load up the box, he did a few different things. He knew his check downs, his sight adjustments. He would throw a quick slant, quick crossing route. If not, they're playing man across the board. They're going cover 0. I'm going to take a shot down the field. He had multiple long passes down the field. He had a long pass to Kirkwood. He had a nice pass to August Petrie III. He hit receivers on slants. And he did an excellent job. There were other instances where Jackson State would load up the box. He knew the blitz was coming. He dropped back the pass. Nobody was open downfield. He would just take off and run. He had a long B. Sean McCray type run for a touchdown yesterday. So I mean, he did an excellent job in terms of from a running standpoint, from a passing standpoint. Of course, at a certain point in the game, his receivers let him down. They dropped multiple passes. Coach Dooley again, he had a couple other coaching issues in terms of clock management at the end of the first half. He got Southern back in the game, but essentially the hole was too deep for him to dig Southern out of the hole. Had he did what I said do and start Glenn above McDaniel yesterday from the outset of the game and not put him at a 26-point deficit, I honestly believe Southern either almost wins that game yesterday or they actually win it. I mean, and from my perspective, Glenn above McDaniel, you can honestly say there was two SWAC championship games that had he played and started in both of those games yesterday against Jackson State and a few years ago against Alcorn State, that he's sitting in the same position that Eric Aranda is sitting in, like arguably one of the better Southern quarterbacks in like the pantheon of Southern quarterbacks from the Pete Richardson era to this current point, because he could have beat Alcorn State that year, and he definitely could have beat Jackson State had Coach Dooley not put his team in a compromising situation. And one last thing to kind of cap off the SWAC championship game from yesterday. Senior, may he rest in peace. Southern had this defensive back. I'm not gonna say his name because I don't want to put him out there like that. He used to get beat constantly. The opposing team, it could be 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20, 3rd and 25. The opposing team would pick on him. And basically during games, Southern home games, Senior would used to say that Pete Richardson, the dean of the SWAC. In fact, I don't know if y'all saw the SWAC championship game yesterday. He was broadcasting in the booth during the game. They showed him a couple times during the game. But Senior used to say, well, hey, for Pete Richardson to stick with this guy, like Pete Richardson must be friendly with this guy's mom, And he didn't mean it in a friendly buddy type way. He meant like in an intimate type way. And of course, the fans in the stands used to get a kick out of it. Because Senior was real colorful. But someone told me today, if this person here, if they tell you there's cheese on the moon, just go get you some crackers. The source he might have gotten it from might not be reliable. So that's why I'm not 100% accurate on what the situation is. But this person is an honest guy. He said it is true. But somebody that he knows told him that the reason why, and this is just hearsay, so don't take it as gospel, but essentially the same thing Senior used to say, not from an intimate standpoint, but from a buddy standpoint. Evidently, Coach Dooley is close with Bashan McCrae's family, whatever the case may be.
You know what? I assumed that when I texted you that yesterday during
Yeah,
the game.
yeah.
But I didn't know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so he recruited Bashan McCrae. He brought him to Southern or whatever the case may be. So evidently he had some type of relationship with him. And you got to realize, when I was in undergrad, me and some of my, classmates were talking, and basically we had this one guy in our class. Basically, he was like, when he becomes a coach, he's going to let the politicians deal with the politics, and he's going to coach football. And basically, we told him, no matter what you do in life, you're going to have to deal with some type of politics. Anytime you're dealing with people and political processes, there's more to it than something is going on behind the scenes. They come to find out. In this particular instance, the reason why he stuck with this guy so long, when it was obvious the whole season that he doesn't give you the best chance and the best opportunity to win. Evidently, from what I'm understanding, like he's a family friend of theirs. That's part of the reason why he stuck with him the whole season. But even with that being said, basically you put yourself in a compromising situation yesterday. Had he started in above McDaniel from the start of the game, from the outset of the game, they probably win that game. Or if not, if they don't win, it's a very close and competitive game. So basically, politics played into that decision for him to stick with him the entire season, even when they lost against Texas Southern and Jackson State the first time, and even, the first quarter where the game essentially was out of reach for Glendon McDaniel, who he dug him out the hole somewhat, but you know, the hill was too steep for him to climb, and he played exceptionally well. Probably up until like the end of the game, I would give his performance yesterday A+ performance because as well as I've seen him play like last year against Alcorn State, he played even better than that yesterday. And it's sad that from a coaching perspective, he had a chance to win the SWAC championship, and he let a personal relationship, get in the way of him potentially winning that game.
Yeah, he did. I must say, uh, I heard, and I did. This is not the first time I've heard this. I even when I was watching Off Script, shout out to Scotty and his show Off Script. Um, Bishawn McCray was recruited as a wide receiver. Is that right? And he converted to a quarterback.
Well, let me touch on that. I was unaware of that, but I know Coach Dawson Odoms. See what Sean McCray is now. Darius Skelton was that at the end of last year and 2 years ago. And the thing with Coach Odoms at the time, Coach Odoms, even though Coach Dooley is offensive minded Coach Odoms was a defensive coordinator under Stump Mitchell, and Stump Mitchell was a terrible head coach at Southern. Eventually, he ended up getting fired, and Coach Odoms is the interim coach. He did well, and he became Southern head coach. So Alcorn State and other teams in the SWAC was just killing Southern with these mobile, athletic quarterbacks. Southern couldn't defend these guys. So it got to a point where Coach Odoms wanted to go out and get him one of those type of quarterbacks. Now, in Coach Odom's particular situation, the guy he ended up getting was Ladarius Skelton. And I could see the reason why he stuck with Skelton is because at that time, Skelton was, even though Glenn Bob McDaniel was better than both him and John Lampley at the time, I think from his mindset, his perspective, Skelton was the most athletic of the group, even though, McDaniel was the best of both worlds. But, those mobile athletic quarterbacks, the team that really killed him the most with it was Alcorn State but the thing Alcorn State had, they had a excellent defense the same way Jackson State has now. And they had an even better running game than Jackson State. In fact, what Alcorn State's running game is now, it was the same thing at that time. So that was a perfect storm, to have a quarterback like a Bishawn McCray, like a Ladarius Skelton, because your defense can make up for your deficiencies, and then they had a very good offensive line at the time. So you could have that type of quarterback, but more than anything, even in a short passing game, there's certain pass plays that Ladarius Skelton can't make. Like yesterday, that pick six he threw, Alcorn State quarterback at the time, he would have been able to make that throw. Now, he might not have been able to really stretch the field the way a Glendon Bubba McDaniel can, but, any like crossing routes, slants, curls, he was able to make like those type of plays like 15, 20 yards down the field, and that was about it. So it goes to show you, like, even last year, at the end of the year, he ended Coach Jason Rollins, who was Southern interim coach last year, he ended up playing with Darius Skelton and started him in the Bayou Classic. But it's so crazy that Darius Skelton was such a good athlete. At one point, he was Southern kick returner last year. And Bishawn McCray is that kind of guy right now. So it's not shocking that he probably did play wide receiver. Maybe he's capable of playing wide receiver because he kind of reminds me so much of Ladarius Skelton. The fact that Ladarius Skelton was Southern starting kick returner at one point during the course of the year last year, that goes to show you that, he was just a glorified running back playing quarterback. And Bishawn McCray is the same thing at this point.
Oh wow. So that situation, and it's just me looking on the outside looking in. Um, that kind of is reminiscent of the Major Applewhite and Chris Sims situation, to where there was a personal relationship that was kind of taking precedent over who actually should be in there to help win ball games.
Absolutely.
and at University of Texas at that time, it was so obvious that Major Applewhite gave them the best chance to win. But, you know, evidently, whoever it was had a personal relationship with Phil Simms. You know, at that particular interest, I mean, at that particular point, it's a conflict of interest because, you know, you basically it's a personal relationship that is not giving your team the best chance and the best opportunity to win. And I mean, I've seen it multiple times over the course of the years, but usually it's on like lower levels like middle school, high school. But once you get to college on up, like, you know, a lot is at stake. You know, these college coaches, if you're in the SWAC, you can make upwards to $300,000. If you in a Power Five conference, you can make millions of dollars a year. So, man, I'm not jeopardizing my job, my livelihood behind a personal relationship. It's ridiculous, you know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it was so obvious that Glendon McDaniel was the better quarterback. My bad if y'all hear some barking. That's my little puppy
Mm-hmm.
barking in the background. But it was so obvious. Like I started getting really upset at Coach Dooley. Like, you know, don't get me wrong. I appreciated what Coach Prime did at Jackson State, rooting for him. But you know, as far as football, I was like, this is this young man. See, he transferred to Southern, just with 1 year left, and he spent his 1 year backing up to a quarterback that, I mean, he's better than.
Well, hold up.
It
So,
didn't make sense.
Clinton McDaniel, he didn't transfer. He was already at Southern, but uh, this was his final year at ability. He was a grad senior.
Oh,
So
okay.
he was the starter. He was the starter most of the year last year. But eventually, the guy that I told you that was essentially what Bashawn McCray is now, he was that then, Darius Skelton. Eventually, he eventually beat out Darius Skelton and John Lester. Darius Skelton is what Sean McCray is now, and John Lampley is what Carol Blood is now. So eventually he overtook those guys, and he pretty much started most of the year last year. The only games he didn't start early in the year, and he didn't start in the Bayou Classic. Whereas, uh, just like he's a grad senior right now, Darius Skelton was a grad senior last year, and basically, you know, it was his last year of his 5th year eligibility. So Nathan Rollins just let him start in the Bayou Classic last year. So basically, he did the same thing with McDaniel. And well, I'm not gonna say the same thing, but basically, you know, he just let Bashawn McCray start, and I guess once his back was against the wall, he realized like, hey, this guy gives me the best chance to win. Let's just throw him out there. But like I said, at that point, you're down 26-0, you know. So
I mean, by then it was so, and that's even worse, though, Coach. Like,
yeah,
if the young man been with the squad, um, and you bring Bishan McCray in, and you go with him, I mean, it's man, Southern fans calling for the Coach Dooley head, and
no, no.
be
Well, I mean, I told you this at the beginning of the season, bro. Southern fan base on the HBCU level,
mm-hmm.
it's equivalent to maybe like a Notre Dame, a University of Texas, uh, maybe Nebraska, like any like fan base that think they should be competing for a championship year in and year out. Southern fan base is the equivalent to that.
Yeah,
I mean,
you told me that.
you got to realize as many SWAC championships as Pete Richardson won. Man, they wanted Pete Richardson out probably every other year at one point. So, so, so it, you know, and the thing about it, they've been calling for Bashawn to be out of that, Glenn above McDaniel to be the starter ever since the Texas Southern game. You know, because I mean, you really couldn't tell anything based on the Florida Memorial game because, you know, no disrespect to Florida Memorial,
They trash.
but Catholic High, who lost in the state championship game on Friday, you know, I think Catholic High would give Florida Memorial a good game. In fact, they might even beat Florida Memorial. You know, So beating them 86-0 really proved nothing. Uh, LSU, we talked about this at the beginning of the season. My mom and I was sitting down talking last night. There's no way we would have thought when we went to Tiger Stadium, Death Valley, and watched LSU and Southern play at the beginning of the year. There's no way we would have thought the way they played the week before against Florida State that LSU was going to play in the SEC championship game last night against Georgia, and at the same time, Southern was going to play against Jackson State in the SWAC championship game. And the crazy thing about it is, essentially, they lost by not basically the same score, but the same margin of victory. Southern lost to Jackson State by 19, and LSU lost to Georgia by 20. And basically, both teams that they went against had dominant defenses. But the difference between Southern and LSU is, we knew Jaden Daniels was hurt going into the SEC championship game, and he was nicked up. He didn't get to play the whole game. But I knew going into the game that Glendon Bubba McDaniel gave him by far, not even close, by far the best chance to win. And they basically blew it, Coach Dooley, he blew it. And they've been calling for Bishawn McCree's head since the Texas Southern game. And he just stuck with him every step of the way. Now, to his credit, this is the second year in a row he was in the SWAC championship game playing against Jackson State. But this is also the second year in a row he lost to Jackson State. Where in this particular instance, I really can't vouch for what he could have done differently, with Prairie View last year to beat Jackson State. But yesterday, had he started going to Bowden McDaniel, I'm confident that they win that game. And if they don't win it, if they lose, it's going to be a close game because, everybody that I talked to, they was like, man, it was so obvious when you watch those three quarterbacks play, he was head and shoulders above, those other two. Now, don't get me wrong. Over the years, I haven't been 100% accurate when it comes to like Southern quarterbacks because at one point, I didn't think Quincy Reshaw was going to be what he became. But the thing with him, Coach Richardson stuck with him the way Coach Dooley, and you got to realize he's a disciple of Coach Richardson. Coach Dooley, he played at Grambling. He was a GA and assistant under Coach Richardson at Southern. So I think you can see the way he coaches that he has a lot of Coach Richardson ideologies and thoughts in his mind. He has that same mindset. And at the time, the way Coach Dooley stuck with Quincy Reshaw, and week in and week out, he was like, he's hurt. And I'm like, man, if he's this hurt, just put Thomas Richards the backup quarterback. Why don't you just start him instead? But he stuck with him. And it wasn't until like Quincy Reshaw's junior year that he was finally healthy, like at the end of the year in the Bayou Classic. He played exceptionally well. And, I remember asking my dad after the game, like, do you think this guy that we saw the entire season, is he that guy or is he the guy we saw today in the Bayou Classic? And he was like, well, I don't know, son. We'll see next year. And sure enough, the next year, he just pretty much rolled over everything. The one loss he had against Alcorn State, that was like his one not good or great performance. He was like so-so and they lost that game. But every other game, he was lights out. He was exceptional. So he might have been like the one, like miss I had. But more often than not, if I say, hey, this guy, Terrence Lever should be starting over Troy Williams or Sam George should be starting over Marcus Jacoby, I've been right like probably 9 out of 10 times,
Yeah, Coach, you been on it lately as far as when it comes to Southern and predicting what's been going on and stuff. So I have to give you your flowers. Um, but I mean, as far as how Bubba McDaniel played, Glendon Bubba McDaniel, um, 15 completions, 34 attempts, 220 yards, one touchdown. He had 2 interceptions, but that's when the reason why I'm gonna give him slack because that's out of desperation.
Well, yeah,
When
I don't mean to cut you off, but those last 2 picks he threw, like, 5 minutes or less in the fourth quarter, the game was pretty much over. He just was trying to
yeah,
force those passes. And he was
exactly.
trying to make something happen. And in addition to that, of those complete incompletions, you know, I don't know if you remember this last week. I told you he likes to stretch the field. Now, there were instances where when Jackson State loaded up the box to blitz, he threw the quick slant multiple times, or he he threw to his check down or his hot route. He threw to his hot route, on a few occasions. But more than anything, he was pushing the ball on the field, and Kirkwood dropped a big pass. So a lot of his receivers dropped, multiple passes, and then there were instances where, like I remember, I don't know if it was Carl Ligon or Kendrick Grimes, one of the two backs they ran right off the backfield, and he was in trouble. He scrambled, and he threw it. It was a catchable pass, but they wasn't ready for the pass. I mean, that happened to him like a few occasions yesterday, and then he had a few long passes that he had like one of August Petrie the third. He had one of Kirkwood. He had one of another. Like they were dropping passes. So, the stats really don't really tell you how well he played in that game yesterday.
No, it really don't. Because McGee, did you see that catch he caught on Travis Hunter?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
That was nice. That was nice.
In fact,
Go ahead.
he had a crazy back shoulder fade, because I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, he underthrew it. But you could see the way he threw the pass, because watching him quarterback yesterday and last season, there are instances where that pass to Kirkwood, it was a dime. He threw it perfectly on his back shoulder, and he dropped it right in the bread basket, and Kirkwood dropped it. So when he underthrew that pass, he did it intentionally, and the guy, I don't think that one was on Travis Hunter. It was on someone else. And he made that catch. So he had like a few perfect throws. Like I said, he reminded me so much of Eric Randall yesterday, the way he played. He was outstanding.
Yeah, he was, but you got to give it up to Jackson State. Jackson State knew that basically their running game was so-so, only 61 yards on the ground. Uh, Santee Marshall had 39. But their air attack, Hooks was eating, Gaines was eating, Powers was eating. I mean, you have to worry about Hooks, then Gaines start acting a fool. You worry about Gaines and Rico Powers start acting a fool. Then Kevin Coleman, the freshman, come out of nowhere and catch a touchdown, first catch of the game. I mean, like they had weapons all over the field, but Southern had a Southern um not as far as coaching, but I'm just gonna say Glendon McDaniel had a valiant effort, tried to keep his ball club in the game.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
and I
coach.
cut y'all, bro. I mean, in terms of Southern's defense versus Jackson State's offense, I'm not gonna lie, bro. From a defensive standpoint, no matter what Southern did, they were wrong. Because me personally, just watching them play the first game, I'm like, bro, like they didn't have enough pressure on Shador, so I would load up the box and I would get after him, bro. When Southern loaded up the box and got after Shador, like he was burning them left and right. I mean, a lot of long passes down the field. I mean, guys were taking slants and crossing routes and getting long plays out of it. Southern defensive backs, except for the Harris kid, Corian Harris, he was the only, you know, defensive back that made the all SWAC team. Like none of the Southern defensive backs could guard or defend Jackson State's wide receivers. So, like you said, that's why they pretty much ate so much, And I think that Southern did the best you know, when they were able to get a little bit of pressure, but more than anything, they sat back and they played man to man, and they might go cover two, or even if they played zone where they just kind of played off everybody. But anytime Southern played man to man, or they played zone and they didn't get pressure, man, Jackson State, they just were just killing Southern's defense. And that's why it was, all that more imperative, the fact that your defense can't stop Jackson State's offense. That made it even worse, from the standpoint of, you should have started the right quarterback from the opening kickoff.
Yes,
Uh,
and go ahead, Brent.
no, I was just about to ask, how did Southern's defense actually try to hold up initially to Jackson State offense? But I think Coach pretty much covered that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Brent. They mixed up coverage. There were certain times they backed off and they played zone, and and Jackson State killed them. There were other times they loaded up the box and they went cover one or cover zero, and they killed them. They back off and play cover two. They still killed them. I mean, on one instance yesterday, it was 3rd and 14, and they ended up getting like a 30-yard pass. He caught like a what, a 10-yard slant or post route, and he just kept running out of the field. The Harris kid that made all SWAC, he had to make the touchdown saving tackle. So no matter what Southern did defensively, you know, they were wrong. I think the only stretch Southern where they really started to kind of get back in the game when Glennon McDaniel gave their offense some life. There was a point where Jackson State had a couple holding penalties and they were like really behind the sticks. So Southern, what they did was they just backed off and they played a lot of zone. And what they did was they would let Jackson State wide receivers catch the ball and they would rally and they would gang tackle. But other than that, outside of that stretch there, Southern's defense could not stop Jackson State's offense. And no matter what they did, whether they played zone, whether they played man-to-man, whether they, pressed, whether they played off, no matter what they did, they were wrong. So I got to give it to Jackson State. I can't put it all on Coach Dooley. Jackson State's offense, they played exceptionally well, especially in the passing game. So you got to give Shador, you got to give him his credit. He played well yesterday.
I ain't gonna lie, I was kind of upset with the D line of Southern. They, I don't want to say they played horrible, but they did keep Wilkerson to 61 yards. But Dumas, I was expecting Dumas, the transfer from Prairie View A&M. I was expecting him to uh, play better this game.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't mean to cut you off, bro. I mean, Taj Brown, I grew up with Taj Brown's uncles. He's the only Southern defensive lineman that made the All SWAC team. He didn't make first team. I think he made second team. And of course, Jordan Lewis, he didn't make any teams. Because remember I was telling you last week about Joe Williams, but the difference between him and Joe Williams was constantly getting double his senior year, so Joe Williams couldn't get off. They've been playing Jordan Lewis like straight up, and he hasn't been able to get no pressure. So I noticed yesterday they kind of put him, back more at a linebacker type spot, and they kind of try to blitz him a little bit. That was the reason why he got the one sack. I think they had him spy Shador, and eventually he came in and made the sack. But most of the year Jason Dumas been getting doubled. He did nothing yesterday. Tosh Brown really didn't do a whole lot. The linebacker that had a couple sacks last week against Grambling, he didn't do much. And Jordan Lewis. So between the four of them, when they had a 4-man rush, Shador was just sitting in the backfield, and I counted at one point he had like 10 seconds to throw the ball, and that was part of the reason why Jackson State wide receivers, had such big plays, because there was no pass rush, and when they did blitz him, he saw the blitz coming and he was able to burn him on that too. So no matter what they did, Southern defense was wrong.
Yep, there are games like that, man. And was it a situation to where even though they were guessing wrong, it was just maybe too much talent, or was it just maybe it being schemed up, or probably both?
No, I'm not gonna lie. The cap in talent uh, between Southern's defense and Jackson State's offense, it was obvious, because none of Southern DBs could run with Jackson State's wide receivers. So schematically, it didn't matter what you did. There was nothing you really gonna be able to do from a coaching standpoint. There were instances where they tried to disguise coverage. There were instances where they blitzed, where they played off. Instances they played zone, they played man to man. I think the only other thing he maybe could have done was maybe zone blitz more, where they would drop, make it look like they coming, and they would drop one guy, and they would send another guy in his place. But outside of that, I don't think it really would have mattered, because Shador, he reads coverage well. His decision making, just like Glendon McDaniel was, he made excellent decisions. But the only difference is he has a lot more weapons on the perimeter than Glendon McDaniel. So he pretty much carved Southern's defense up yesterday.
Yeah, he sure did. I mean, it was basically unfair for that secondary. What's up, Picasso? And Picasso said, y'all know that y'all know what makes Deion Sanders move so sound, like it's karma or get back. I guess it was a question.
Can you clarify the question, bro?
Yeah, clarify that, Picasso. I think I know what you're asking, but we want to make sure.
Yeah.
But let's because I'm eager to get to the what Picasso was talking about the Deion Sanders move. Um, okay, he just answered. He said, I saw something, baby, TikTok. Somebody stole his necklaces. Oh, okay. We'll
Uh,
hit on that. We'll hit on that. Um, we're gonna move on to the Celebration Bowl. Um, Coach, who do you think wins versus North Carolina A&T? Not A&T's, North Carolina Central versus Jackson State for the Celebration Bowl.
well, you know, the issue with Jackson State now is the fact that, uh, I saw Coach Prime talking after the game, and you got to realize with him transitioning to Colorado University, some of those players are going to enter the transfer portal and follow him. Now, it's obvious Shador is going with him. Now, if the team, the way they had it constituted yesterday, if that entire team plays against North Carolina Central in the Celebration Bowl, then it's not even close. I don't think. I mean, unless I could pretty much handpick a Southern team from maybe like 20, 20, 20, 25 years ago, if I can handpick some of the players or some of the Southern teams I want from the past, most teams in current or past teams in the SWAC isn't beating this team. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen teams over the years that could beat this team, but the current landscape in HBCU football, there's nobody in the SWAC or MEAC that I could see that could beat this current team the way they construct it. Now, I think Southern, I don't know if you remember me saying this, bro. I said this in the beginning of the year. The only caveat was Glendon McDaniel had to start, but from an offensive standpoint, I think, he gave you the best chance to win. But even with whatever weapons North Carolina Central have, I don't think it's enough for to beat Jackson State. But I think the one caveat, the fact that Coach Prime is not coaching in that game, and the fact that some of these players that played yesterday, they might not play either because some of these players are entering the transfer portal. Some of those players are gonna follow him to Colorado. It's a big question mark. Now, if I'm gonna get those players from yesterday that played like Shador and some of those other guys, I'm confident that Jackson State not just beats but blows out North Carolina Central. But since it's questionable now, it's 50-50, kind of almost go either way. But I'm still rolling with Jackson State because they have a good team. Even some of the like backup players, they play well. But how many they starters and star players gonna play in the Celebration Bowl? It kind of remains to be seen. And
That's going to determine because
yeah,
North Carolina Central quarterback uh, is it D Richards. He's been balling all year, bro. I mean, like he's. I'm not saying he's good at Shador, but he's not too far from him. I'll put it like that.
well,
Um,
I'm not gonna lie, bro. The one good thing about it in Jackson State's favor, Jackson State has so many. If you look at the All SWAC team, Jackson State has more players on the All SWAC team than any other team in the SWAC. So, the thing about Glendon Bubba McDaniel is the fact that he gives you the athleticism of a Ladarius. Well, he gives you the pocket presence of a John Lampley or Harold Blood, but he's not as athletic as maybe a Ladarius Skelton or a Bishan McCray. But he goes through his progression quick. He gets rid of the ball, and if nobody's open, he can take off and run. Unless this guy is that or even better, he's gonna struggle against Jackson State's defense. Jackson State, especially when they're motivated to get after it defensively, Jackson State defense is a beast. I mean, up front, they wreaking havoc. They causing constant pressure on the secondary with Travis Hunter and some of those other guys. They're pretty much locking up everything across the board. So, you know, it's difficult to match up with Jackson State's defense.
Hey y'all, I am probably gonna have to jump off of here in the next few minutes, but I do want to just drop a few gems here before I go.
Go ahead,
Um,
Brent. And thank you for joining anyway, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
we
oh
appreciate
yeah,
you.
I appreciate y'all having me, man. It's always a pleasure. Um, what I do want to mention is this, and I know I don't want to jump too far ahead, but um, my thoughts on Coach Prime having to transition from Jackson State to Colorado. Um, it, I'm kind of surprised, but not really. I mean, if an opportunity kind of presents itself, then whatever whatever the reason is, you just have to take advantage of that particular opportunity. So I get that particular part. My thing is, and I've said this like maybe a month or a half back, is if you do have access to those types of schools, my only ask, and this is not me dictating to any grown man what they should do. This is just an ideal that I actually have myself. If you have a situation to where, yes, you can go somewhere that's a bit more advanced and pick up some things from that particular facility and then bring it back eventually, that is the ideal move to make. I don't know what Coach Prime's future plans are after Colorado, but ideally, I would like to see him come back and bring some of the resources back from like being in one of those Power Five conferences or whatever, and then just kind of bringing that back to the HBCUs.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with you with that, bro. In fact, uh, I don't know if Jared gonna touch on this. I'm kind of in line with you. You know, of course, he has a buyout in his contract, so Jackson State is gonna get compensated in that regard. And plus, he brought a lot of attention and a lot of shine to J State. So, you know, I think both parties benefited from it. Well, they benefited you know, equally as far as I'm concerned. So, but I agree with you 100% though, bro. I mean, you never know. I'm not saying Jackson State is going to play Colorado, but uh, you never know something. They might have something in the line that Jackson State might be not a line. In some way, shape, form, or fashion, Jackson State may benefit from that. Besides the buyout.
Yeah, I really do hope so. I was thinking that I definitely agree uh, with you, Picasso. Um, but we're gonna get to it. We're gonna get to it. Picasso said that's how Jimmy Johnson did it with Miami and Florida. He went to Dallas and others like Michael Irvin, Deion Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Kevin Williams, and more. Um, he said Texas stand up for the South. Um, I used to wish, I guess, University of Texas was the number one team in the South at least. So, yeah, Picasso. I think yeah, that's exactly what Deion Sanders is doing. He's pulling the Jimmy Johnson. Um, but not going back to what brother Brent Fox was saying. I 100% agree.
Yeah,
Make your moves. Um, he. But at the same time, just um, never forget where you came from. You had your first major college coaching jobs at Jackson State. So always remember, the people that help you. Um, Disregard the people who were janky, the bull crap alumni people. Where you know how it is in HBCUs, the politics, coach. But just the people that were still there, still trying to help out the kids and um, trying to hold everything together with spit and bubble gum. um, don't forget about them. You know what I mean? Um, but going back to the original question of as far as North Carolina Central, um, and Jackson State. Of course, I'm picking Jackson State to win, but if those players go to the portal um, too soon, of course, I'm picking North Carolina Central to win because North Carolina Central it got a squad. They're in the Celebration Bowl for a reason.
Oh, and one thing too, Coach Prime, he told his players like, hey, he's gonna get with them after the game, and he said the same thing you said in terms of, he pretty much told all of them like, hey, don't jump in the portal because you don't want to jump in that transfer portal and get stuck because Jordan Lewis, I don't know if you know this, he jumped in the portal after Southern season last year, but once Coach Dooley took the job, he ended up coming back to Southern. So, and the thought was with him and Jason Doom was on the same defensive line, Southern was going to be able to wreak havoc defensively, but it didn't turn out that way.
No, it didn't. I had high hopes for them. I thought Lewis and Doom was going to, you know, um, be like a HBCU, Aaron Donald and Von Miller, but
Yeah,
that didn't happen.
and the crazy thing about it, I mean, don't get me wrong, I know Jason Dumas got doubled a lot, but like Taj Brown ended up being like the best of that group. I guess Dumas getting doubled allowed Taj Brown, in a run defense. I don't know if he played against Grambling or not, but I noticed there's a noticeable difference when Taj Brown isn't in the game in terms of their defensive line stopping the run. They struggle to stop the run when Taj Brown is not in the game. And like I said, I'm not just saying this because I grew up with his uncles, but he was he wasn't as disruptive in terms of like getting sacks in the pass game, but in terms of the run game, it was noticeable when he wasn't in the game.
No, no, it wasn't. Uh, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the basically what everybody's been waiting for. What I'm eager, eager to ask everybody. I'm gonna start off with you, Coach. What do you think about Coach Prime going to or accepting the coaching job at Colorado? Of course, a lot of our people calling him a sellout on YouTube. The YouTube streets are hot right now. They're giving him, uh, you know, a tongue lashing. Um, as far as they're trying to say he's not finishing what he's starting. Um, also, uh, basically he just letting the coaches and the players he's leaving behind, they're letting them down. So what do you think about that, Coach?
Bro, first and foremost, you know, from Black addressed this on his Instagram live. For me personally, I'm a teacher and a coach, and at the end of the day, you have to do what's in your own best interest and what's in the best interest of you and your family. You know, I don't know if you recall when we met at the meet and greet. It was a group of us. It was yourself, Brent Fox, a few of the other brothers, Jay Good, Big Snack Pack.
Yeah,
You know, we met at the meet and greet, and the consensus was we knew then that at some point, whether it was going to be after this season, maybe a couple seasons down the line, at some point, bro, he was going to get out the door at Jackson State, and that was one of the things we talked about when we brought up SWAC football. There was somebody, that was a Grambling fan. We had a couple of J State fans. I went to Southern. The brother married the Campbell. He went to Texas Southern. You know, Big Snack Pack, J Good, they went to Southern. So you had all different HBCUs and the SWAC represented. And, you know, at the time, I didn't get to meet as many people at the meet and greet because the conversation was so good. And I just stayed in that one section. I think when Nick J and Box and a couple other people came in, I didn't get to meet them because, we just talked about SWAC football for so long. But the consensus that we all said was Like at some point, bro, he's gonna get out the door. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's obvious. You know, as a coach, you have to do what's in your best interest, bro. I've taught at a few different schools, and at some point, you know, you always see teachers, you know, like, hey, you know, they got a bet, got a chance, a great opportunity making more money at a better school. You know, those teachers jump at it all the time because, you know, in the professional education, we don't make a lot of money anyway to begin with. And then, you know, just to
Right.
give a personal experience, you know, one of my players, you know, he didn't, you know, at my school, I'm the athletic director and I'm the head football and head basketball coach, right? And I had a player, he didn't play for me, he played for one of the, you know, the Pop Warner teams. Well, we call him Breck in Baton Rouge, but he played, you know, played for one of the Breck teams and he was a star player, right? So he played basketball for me and he ran track. And he was the best athlete at the school, and he was only a seventh grader, right? The crazy thing about it is, you know, earlier when we were talking, I mentioned Catholic High when I mentioned Florida Memorial. Well, Catholic High played in the state championship game uh, Friday. I think they, you know, they lost, but you know they're perennial power. They're gonna be back again next year more than likely. So anyway, to make a long story short, you know, he was asking me, he was like, Coach, you know, you think I should, you know, take the scholarship to go to Catholic High and, you know, so on and so. I say, son, I said, I'm gonna be honest with you. I said at the end of the day, you have to do what's in your own best interest. It would be selfish as me as a coach to rely on you to carry my football program when there's no guarantee I'm gonna have a football team, which we didn't. I ended up being a head coach. Even though I'm coaching at the school I'm at, I ended up being a head coach at another school because I didn't have enough players to fill a team. I said it'll
Right.
be selfish
You
of me.
told me about that.
Yeah, it'll be selfish of me to rely on you to carry my athletic program. I'm like, son, at the end of the day, you have to do what's in your best interest. Because I say, at the day of tomorrow, if a better school came along making where I could make more money and I have more resources at my disposal and so on and so forth, I'm gonna be truthful. I'm gonna leave. And and I told him that point blank. So I'm like, at the end of the day, you have to do what's in your best interest. So for these people that's calling him a coon and a sellout and saying all these ridiculous things, like, bro, this man has a family. And I know they're saying, well, hey, he made millions in the NFL and, you know, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, like Black said, you asking him to keep a job where he's only gonna make 6% of what he's gonna make at the University of Colorado, you know, for the Colorado Buffaloes. Like, man, that is selfish. If you were in that same situation, you would leave for greener pastures also. So, you know, I'm not begrudging him for that. I'm not beholding for him for that. You know, I just appreciate that, you know, he was able to shine a light on Jackson State in the SWAC. And even though I think in the long run it'll probably be in Southern's best interest for him to leave. You know, I was hoping he stayed another year or two, but at the end of the day, like, you know, I hope he he goes to Colorado. You know, he gets his money, but more than anything, he's successful and he thrives. Because at the end of the day, like, you know, he has to do what's in the best interest of him and his family. So
Exactly.
for these people that are saying these things about him, like, they're not being fair. They need to put themselves in that same situation and ask what they would do if they were in that situation. So it's sad, you know.
You said a mouthful there, coach, and that's my whole thing about it. And people really don't know what's going on behind closed doors, the politics going on in the HBCUs, dealing with the alumni, dealing with the SWAC association, uh, dealing with just drama and stuff behind closed doors. Like Picasso just said, and I don't know if, how true it is, but I can believe it. Basically, something going on where somebody stole his necklace or something like that. Um, didn't in the beginning of last year during the spring somebody stole like his a radio or something like that. Correct me
I
if
mean,
I'm wrong.
I don't know for certain, but I mean that's definitely feasible, you know. And and the thing about it is, you know, like I said earlier, anytime you're dealing with people, you're dealing with political processes, you know, you're gonna deal with politics regardless, no matter what. But at the end of the day, like, this is a golden opportunity for him. You know, he won the SWAC. Just say Jackson State go on and win a Celebration Bowl, and they the Black National Championship. But just say he goes to Colorado and he restores them to, you know, what they were in their glory days, and he goes there and win the national championship. Like, you know, he has the opportunity to do, you know, bigger and better things, greater things. So why, you know, is people like, you know, being insensitive? You know, I think, you know, the world we live in, you know, like my mom says all the time, the world is weak, it's getting weaker and wiser. And, you know, more than anything, people don't put themselves in that particular situation. You know, if you in that situation,
Right.
like stay at Jackson State, I mean, he's making 300,000. He's gonna make 5 million at Colorado. Like, why wouldn't he take that opportunity? I don't care if he made $100 million in the NFL. You know, it's still generational wealth that he could pass on to his children and his children's children and his children's children's children. So, like, man, like, come on, man, that's a no brainer.
It's
So,
definitely a no-brainer. It's
hey,
definitely a no-brainer. Go ahead, coach.
much as I love Southern, if you gave me a head coaching opportunity at Southern, or you gave me a head coaching opportunity at LSU, I'm going to LSU. Because guess what? I might make 300,000 at Southern, but at LSU I might make about 8 million. So come on, man, it's a no brainer, you know.
Yeah, you can't tell me to settle with bologna and I got steak money. And don't get me wrong,
Yeah,
ain't nothing wrong with
yeah.
bologna. Ain't nothing wrong with bologna, but if I can afford better, I'm a get what I want. But in the aspect of coaching and the coaching landscape, I believe people are not like you said, are especially our people. Not our, because there's a lot. I want to make this. I want to make this clear. There's a lot of our people saying, "Come on, like uh, Coach Prime does not owe Jackson State anything. He
It's
put
especially in the LDBC, you know.
yes,
I've seen a couple of LDC members going hard for Coach Prime, you know.
yes, definitely. LDCB brothers and sisters, um, going hard in the paint for Coach Prime. As far as you black YouTube, but um, I like it's like you said, a lot of people are not being fair about it and not looking at the whole um picture of why he may be doing it. Um, he said, "My bad." Picasso said, "My bad." He said they stole his wallet. He said, "Thankfully, he wore his necklaces, or else they would have gotten stolen as well." He did a good move because someone feels like underpaid for his skills. Um,
And
but
I don't mean to cut y'all, bro. One other thing too, you know, from what I'm understanding, like if not most, maybe all of the coaches are going with him because, you know, when he talked about this on 60 Minutes, you know, that was one of his driving forces for entertaining other schools when they came calling was the fact that, you know, a lot of the coaches on his coaching staff, like these guys play in the NFL also. And, you know, he wants to get them, you know, more money. I'm gonna give you an example, right? I'm gonna use my Southern LSU
go
example.
ahead,
You
coach. Go
know,
ahead.
one of my a guy that I knew this guy that was that Southern was interested in hiring to be the head coach of Southern, but he was like assistant coach at LSU. The crazy thing about it is assistant coach at LSU, he was making more money than than Coach Richardson at his peak because Coach Richardson is really who really start upping the money for like a lot of SWAC coaches. Because at one point, you know, they wasn't even making 100,000. So he upped the money, and then when Southern hired Stump Mitchell, they upped the money some. So Southern has kind of been part of the like the HBCU drive to really push up the pay for the coaches. But the crazy thing about it was he was making more as an assistant coach at LSU than the head coach was making at Southern. And the crazy thing about it is, assistant coaches at LSU making like, you know, 400,000, like a half a mil. Assistant coaches at Southern like making like 50 grand, 60 grand a year. So that was one of his like major reasons for taking a Power Five job is not only get himself more money, but also to get his assistant coaches more money. So that was one of the driving factors. So more than like
Definitely.
if more than likely, if not all, then most of those coaches stay, and whichever one decides to stay behind, more than likely, they're probably gonna make that guy the head coach because they could, this was, we talked about this last week. This is one of the major reasons why Southern opted for Coach Dooley because they knew that, he's a SWAC coach. I hate to say it, he's not gonna get an offer from like a Colorado, or LSU, or University of Texas, or Texas A&M, whoever. He's gonna be pretty much stay in the SWAC, But if they'd have hired Kevin Sumner and he did well at Southern, that was gonna be a stepping stone to another Power 5 job for him. So that was the reason why Southern opted for Coach Dooley because Coach Richardson backed him. But more than anything, Southern was his dream job, and more than anything, he probably not gonna ascend beyond that. And we talked about this also. There's this stigma amongst white coaches. Scotty, he talks about it all the time on off script. The Bayou Classic is a perfect example. SWAC coaches aren't really known for like being great X's and O's kind of guys and making like great adjustments. And hate to say it, like I said, the Bayou Classic is a shining example of that. And to get a SWAC coach that really actually legitimate has a chance to go to a Power 5 and make a difference, I'm all for it because even as great as Coach Robertson was, when he was flirting with Power 5 jobs and even flirting with being the head football coach for the Rams back in the gap, it was only a token interview. They had no interest of ever making Coach Rob the head football coach of an NFL team. It was only, hey, he's prominent amongst HBCUs, this, that, and the third. It was merely was a token interview. They had no intentions on ever hiring Coach Robinson, even as legendary as he was.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry to say, Coach Dooley basically made a good example of what we're talking about as far as the stigma with certain black coaches, and
Yeah.
and then not and I just want to explain what me and Coach 67 Sport TV is talking about. Um, there's a lot of black coaches that are good X's and O's guys, but some of these coaches, I'm just gonna say, especially in these HBCU jobs, they know the right people. I'll put it like that, and they can coach good, just good enough to keep their jobs. So we're not trying to say that some of these brothers out here don't know their X's and O's. It's just that uh, some of them fall right into uh, the stereotype, unfortunately.
And like I said, I mean, I love the SWAC. I graduated from Southern. I'm not putting SWAC coaches down, but like Meek Mill said in his song, there's levels to this. And
Right.
to be truthful, I'm gonna give you an example. It's great and it's legendary as Coach Richardson is the dean of the SWAC. I remember, the teams that play in this game is different, but at the time, the name of the game was called the Big Easy Classic. Anytime, HBCU play in a big game, it's some type of classic, Bayou Classic, Boombox Classic, whatever. So Southern played against Tulane. And at the time, Patrick Ramsey was the starting quarterback for Tulane. He eventually ended up going to the NFL. I think he played for the Washington Redskins, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway,
Yeah.
Southern played against Tulane. Michael Hayes, he was an NFL prospect. The only reason why he didn't make it to the NFL was because uh, he came back for his 6-year eligibility because he initially started out at LSU, and he came back for his 6-year eligibility, and he got hurt, and he was good, but he wasn't really ever the same. So anyway, they played against Tulane, and Tulane kicked the field goal their first drive. I think Southern went like 3-and-out, and then Tulane kicked another field goal, and then Southern eventually went down the field and scored a touchdown. After that, maybe like that third drive, Tulane made some adjustments. And as great as Coach Richardson was, he really didn't make no counter adjustments to Tulane's adjustments. And even though, Tulane had better talent, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it because, of the 3 Louisiana schools that played in conference championship games yesterday, Tulane was only 3 between Southern, LSU, and Tulane. Tulane was the only one that won. But anyway, and the point I'm trying to make was I didn't see a huge gap between the way I saw yesterday between Southern and Jackson State. I didn't see that big a gap between Tulane and Southern. But yet, Tulane coaches made adjustments, and Coach Richardson didn't really make no counter adjustments, and Tulane went on to blow Southern out. I think that might have been the last when Southern took that lead 7-6. That was the last time Tulane scored in the game, and that was pretty. I mean, that was the last time Southern scored in the game. That was it. They went on just to blow Southern out, and I even saw it. Not just in that game, but anytime Southern played against like bigger teams, the ULLs of the world, like it's a gap in terms of like from an X's and O's standpoint in terms of not just making adjustments because I've seen Coach Richardson make like brilliant adjustments like from game to game, but we talking about like in-game adjustments mid-game when you playing against a bigger team, because even when I was in high school, that's one thing we knew about our coach. Like, yeah, he might make adjustments from game to game, but he was limited. And when we played against a team that had equal or better talent, we knew we were gonna lose the game because from an X and O standpoint, he was. I'm just be truthful. He was a good coach.
Coach, can I ask you a question? I want you to be truthful.
Yes, sir.
Because I heard a lot of people use this perspective as well as the reason why Coach Prime left to Colorado. Is it possible that the SWAC, people in the SWAC, and there's people in the SWAC that's listening. I'm not if it's not you, if it's not true, I'm just asking a question here. Uh, they were trying to say that certain people was making it uncomfortable for Coach Prime, where he couldn't do what he wanted to do. Um, you know, basically, Coach Prime wasn't uh go along to get it on along type. He didn't stay in the stand. He was an outsider trying to make moves, and some people in the SWAC or the HBCU community didn't like it. The ones who like it the way it is now. Do you think there's some truth to that, Coach?
I I strongly disagree with that. Now
Explain.
the reason I said that because I don't know if you remember Eddie Robinson Jr., not the like Jay Good cleared it up. That's not the son of
Not the son,
that
yeah.
senior that played for that was the head coach of Grambling. But he's kind of one of those. He played in the SWAC because I don't know if if you go to any SWAC games. I saw it after he made that comment about Coach Prime.
Hmm.
At every Southern home game after that, I saw at least 10 T-shirts that say "I'm SWAC," and I saw maybe about a dozen of them at the Bayou Classic. So it pretty much it was an ongoing joke, but it's a narrative that in the minds of a lot of people, Coach Prime really isn't a SWAC coach. He's just a coach that used a SWAC job as a stepping stone to a Power Five job to a lot of people. But I don't, I don't think nobody really made him uncomfortable or depressed him. But I think there is that narrative that he's truly not SWAC, and I think Coach Eddie Robinson Jr. was the first person to really point it out, and he was vocal about it. And people like him, I'm gonna be truthful. You and I talked about it at the time.
Yes,
I
sir.
think there was a little jealousy in
Yes,
that.
Lord.
But
It was.
not only that, but a lot of people around the SWAC has that same mindset. I'm not saying they pressed him at J State or they pressed him at other schools, but I think a lot of people have that mindset. And I think the reason why he took the Colorado job is because essentially is a better opportunity to making far more money. But the thing about it is what you just touched on in terms of he's not one of these go along to get along kind of people. That was a narrative that was out there in terms of there's even bigger jobs that's out there that people wanted him to be the head coach at bigger schools like SEC schools or whatever the case may be. But the reason why he was never considered for those type of jobs because, like you said, he's not one of these go along to get along type of people. He's a bright shining star. He's a big personality. He's he's charismatic, and the reason why they didn't consider him for these kind of jobs because you gotta understand like these ADs, these big time boosters, these presidents of these schools, they want somebody that they can control and that kind of is going to be a puppet and kind of do what they want them to do. And he's not that guy, and it's obvious he's not that guy. So
Yeah,
that's why
he's
they didn't
not.
consider him. They didn't consider him for those jobs. And I think Colorado, they saw the job he did at J State, and essentially they swung for the fences. They're trying to go back to what they were, and they're trying to get back to that. So that was the reason why they kind of gave him the $5 million a year. But more than anything, they gave him the keys to the city, so he could do whatever he needs to do to get back to where they want to get back to. But a lot of those other jobs, especially like SEC jobs, they wouldn't consider somebody like him because, he's not go along to get along. He's not going to do what you want, when you want him to do, how you want him to do. He's not a puppet. He's not just going to dance to your beat. And just to, I hate to use LSU as an example again, but from what I'm hearing, like people I know per se, the reason why Coach Saban, didn't stay at LSU, and he ended up taking a job for the Miami Dolphins was because, the AD and the boosters and the president, they kind of wanted him to kind of be like, do things the way they want him to do it. And they just wouldn't let him be. And, you and I talked about it, like, I think our first show, LSU kind of always had like this quarterback controversy, and it was more of the complexion of your skin more than anything. And when they went to Coach Brian Kelly, evidently they must have told him, like, hey, you could play whoever you want. Because years past, Jaden Daniels being a starting quarterback, that probably would have been a no-go. You know what I'm saying? So when they went to him, they might have been so desperate to get LSU back into the national championship picture. They maybe just told him, like, hey, you can start whoever you want. You can play whoever you want. You're not gonna have problems with the president, the AD, the boosters, whoever. And you gotta understand, like, boosters and ADs and presidents of these schools, they want somebody they can control. And it's obvious, somebody like Coach Prime isn't that guy. So that's probably why he's not even considered for some of these bigger Power 5 jobs.
Yeah, and that was I had thoughts like did some of the boosters or the alumni um, of Jackson State did they bump heads with Coach Dion and Coach Dion?
I
That's
mean,
all. That's the questions that you come. Not saying that happened. Those are the questions that come to your head. And Coach Dion was basically like, "Oh hell no, I gotta."
I
I
mean,
appreciate the opportunity, but I gotta move on to this. Um, this big opportunity. Go ahead, Coach.
you got to realize what you just said. It's feasible. That type of thing happens more often than you would even know. And I'm not just talking about on the college level. I'm talking about like in the NFL. Like if you see a player like just mysteriously, that's like a Pro Bowl caliber player, he mysteriously get traded for like no real reason, and you scratch your head like, okay, what happened? What you just described, that happens more often than you would realize on a day-to-day basis. Now, it's obvious it happens in everyday life, but I'm talking about even on the highest levels than you might even think. So it happens, and I think it might have happened to a lesser degree, but I don't think it pushed him to the Colorado job. I think the main driving factor for the Colorado job is more money and it's a much bigger opportunity. You know, at Jackson State, he was going to be limited in terms of what he could do. Whereas, like I said, the Black Fight fan point is an excellent point. I mean, would you go on a job where you're only going to make 6% of what you could potentially make, or you're going to get your full 100%? And that's a valid point. And not only that, but instead of compete for a black national championship, now he can compete for a national championship. So, I think those are the real driving factors. We talked about the coaches aspect of it, where if his assistant coaches follow him, even they're gonna make a lot more money. So, I think those are the main things that factored into it. But, you brought up a valid point. I think not just in the SWAC, but all across college football and even on the NFL level, because think about it, with Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson, that was the reason why Jimmy Johnson ended up, not being the head coach for the Dallas Cowboys anymore, because Jerry Jones didn't feel like he was getting enough credit. So those type of things happen every day, because even as a Saints fan, at one point, Jim Morris Sr. traded Pat Swilling, who was like, defensive player of the year. Come to find out, like they bumped heads behind the scenes, and that was the reason why they ended up trading him. So those things happen more often than you would realize, even in the NFL, NBA,
I'm
college football,
sure.
every day.
Yeah, and just read one of the comments Picasso put. A couple of comments. He said, "I saw on the TikTok guy was saying now that Dion was leaving, the people leaving people are now going back to crime and hood mentality. Dion outgrew the box people had him in."
Now you got to realize. I mean, he brings up a valid point. When they played the first time in the Boombox Classic, you know, I don't know if I told you this story. I think I did. I mean, remember years ago when Southern was at his height when Coach P. Richardson was, the head coach, and before they went up on ticket prices. I mean, ticket prices were like extremely low. I mean, they're still low to me to this day, unless you have season tickets. But anyway, you know, Scotlandville High is like right down the road from Southern University. Like maybe like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. But anyway, the areas that surrounds Southern University, Scotlandville. And I told my uncle, I'm like, do not park in Scotlandville on Scenic Highway. You need to park on campus. If you don't leave, he was a general contractor and a carpenter before he got sick. And I'm like, look, like you can't work until like 3:30 and just say, all right, hey, kickoff is at 6 o'clock, 6:30. I'm gonna just roll on campus. And I'm like, no, you have to leave at a button. Leave work at noon and get dressed and come to the game. And that way you have more than enough time to get on campus. So you don't have to park in Scotlandville. And just like I said he was gonna do, what he ended up doing was working until like 3:30, and he couldn't get on campus. So he ended up parking on Scenic Highway in Scotlandville. And after the game, it was cold that night. And after the game, somebody busted his window, and they didn't even steal anything out the car. And one of the guys was like, "Oh man, he got you on this, that, and the third." And like 5 minutes later, you could hear him yell because they busted his window out too. And evidently, they must have been like some kids. They went all the way down the road, and they just busted the window out people's cars, and they didn't even steal anything. So evidently, the exact same thing happened when Jackson State played against Southern. Like a bunch of people from Baton Rouge, the windows would bust out their car. I don't know if they actually stole anything or not, but from what I'm understanding, like, in that area, in that Jackson area, like a lot of people have like a real like hood mentality, this, that, and the third. So that was the reason why, so many like windows was busted. And from what I'm understanding, it was like all Southern things, or it might have been a mix, who knows? But, I could see that being a contributing factor in terms of, the
Because
mentality of some of the people at J State.
I'm not gonna lie, and it goes back to what I was thinking with Picasso was bringing up when somebody supposedly stole, not allegedly, because we don't know this for a fact. But thank you for the information, Picasso. Somebody allegedly stole his wallet after like last year. So I guess somebody stole something out of his office as well. Um, During the press conference, he kept on bringing up how the university in the area that Colorado is in has, doesn't is a good area, and it doesn't have a lot of crime. Uh, and he kept on bringing that up. I think he brought it up multiple times. So that makes me a bell ring in my head when Picasso's bringing this up. And that could be the not the main, but it could be one of the factors why
Yeah,
Coach Prime is, like I said, I'm
it,
moving on to state. Go ahead.
it sounds very feasible, bro. I'm not even gonna lie to you. That sounds extremely feasible.
Very feasible. Very, and at some point you have to do. Uh, there's a saying, the younger generation saying you have to eat greedy out here. Meaning you have to be you have to be selfish a little bit cause not everybody gonna look out for you. So you got to be out here and eat greedy, and make the best decisions for yourself. So I'm with the decision of Coach Prime. I don't think he at first I ain't gonna lie. I was like, oh man, my heart went out to some of the players who who really was all in with Coach Prime and may not be as talented as the
Travis
players, either Travis
Shador,
Hunters or
Shador,
Shador or Rico Powers, of the players we know, Shane Hooks, the people who we
yeah,
know are
the
going to be in the portal.
Miller kid
Yes,
was the defensive player of the year for the SWAC.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
those type of players. they may have to stay at Jackson State. But at the same time, and like Picasso just said, did no, we talking about the stigma of these some of these black coaches, but we also thank God there's a lot of black coaches out here that do know their X's and O's that destroy some of these stigmas of some of these bonehead coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully Jackson State can uh, hire one of those coaches, and they'll basically they'll build from what Deion Sanders um, has already done. What do you think, Coach?
Well, I'm gonna be truthful. One of the things I thought about is, once J State hired Coach Prime, the thing was a lot of these HBCUs, people were figuring whether we should go with the splash hire and hire somebody like Eddie George, like Tennessee State did, or should we hire somebody that we know gonna do a good job and that's gonna be like uh, a lifelong coach. And we talked about Coach Dooley, but Coach Dooley is a SWAC lifer. He the likelihood of him
Yes.
leaving and going to another school is highly unlikely. Because even like shows past, I brought up, Henry Frazier the third. Even him, he's an anomaly because he as bad as Prairie View was, he got Prairie View to win the SWAC championship. In fact, that ended up being Coach Richardson's last year at Southern, because I remember that time, we went to that game and it rained that night, and I was working at alternative school. The kids were bad, but I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to this. I'm going to this game tonight. I went to the game. It rained, and I'm not gonna lie, it was obvious. Just like I said, I saw with Coach Tom Landry in the NFL, Coach Don Shula, even in the SWAC, I saw it with Coach Eddie Robinson. I saw the same thing with Coach Richardson. It was at that point, at that stage in his career, when he first got to Southern, Brian Lee is probably one of from the Coach Richardson era to now, he's probably one of the better quarterbacks Southern had. And, for them not to win the SWAC championship, I think early in his career, Coach Richardson would have took that same team and they would have won the SWAC championship. But, that night, he just X's and O's just was off. I mean, at that point, it was obvious the game had passed him by. It was just time for him to go, you know. But a lot of these SWAC coaches, they SWAC coaches for life. They're not gonna get an opportunity to go to Colorado, LSU, or wherever. So when Henry Frazier the third, he won that SWAC title. For him to leave, and it's not like he left and went to like a Power 5 school. He left and went to like a Division 2 school, and essentially he was like, I'm a program builder. And I'm like, what? I'm like, you took the team out the basement in the SWAC, and you won the SWAC, and you left for essentially, I don't know if it was more money, but I think it was like a lower tier job. And because he said basically he was a program builder. But the point I'm trying to make is, most of these coaches, they're SWAC coaches for life. So with the next hire, once J State hired Coach Prime, SWAC, I mean, a lot of these SWAC ADs and presidents, they've been facing this dilemma. Should I make a splash hire like Coach Prime and hire like an Eddie George? Or should I hire somebody gonna be in the SWAC for life like a Coach Dooley? And it's that constant debate. But more than anything, and you got to realize Jackson State fan base, I told you about Southern fan base earlier. Jackson State fan base is the exact same way. They think they should win a SWAC every single year. Now, I don't think they're as bad as Southern fan base, but Jackson State fan base. So he was the perfect hire for them. He re-elevated their program back to what they used to be. But the $1 million question at this point is, are they gonna go for another splash hire and go after somebody like I don't know, like Marshall Falk, because he expressed interest in Southern head coaching job? Are they gonna go after somebody like Coach Henry Frazier the third, who took Prairie View and he ascended them to what they are right now.
Ed
So
Reed, he was interested in
Ed was
coaching.
interested also. So I think with Coach Prime leaving, I think it's going the 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 paradigm is going to shift back to coaches that going to be there long term. That's not just going to give a temporary shot in the arm of your program. Because like I said, that was the reason why Southern didn't hire Kevin Sumner, but instead they went for Coach Dooley. And of course, like I said, people that I talked to behind the scenes, they evidently know somebody that knows Coach Sumner personally, and it was like, he could be like, a guy that's not personable, arrogant, and standoffish, and like he's hard to get along with. Like he would be a bad fit for Southern. Whereas somebody like Coach Dooley, who had Coach Richardson's stamp of approval, they wanted him, but the fear was that Coach Sumner was going to use Southern as a stepping stone to another Power 5 job. In fact, that was even the reason why Grambling hired Coach Hugh Jackson. So I think they're probably going to go back. I don't think they're going to hire somebody like a Marshall Falk, like Ed Reed, or even a Ray Lewis. I think they're probably going to go back to somebody that's going to be there a while, and that's really going to elevate their program,
Yeah, I definitely agree. And also, I will say this, just to piggyback on what we were saying about how Coach Prime, he's not a sellout. He's just making the best decision for him and his family. He got a lot of work to do at Colorado, because if you don't,
Yeah.
you talking about in the basement.
Yeah.
Colorado is a bottom dweller right now in that Pac-12. They're 111 right now. Go ahead, Coach.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about it is, I remember when Colorado was like a national championship contender in like the early '90s. I think they won a championship. And the crazy thing about it is, I see the job Lincoln Riley did at USC, but USC was down by USC standards, but they were nowhere near the situation that Colorado is in right now. And even his first year, even because people don't realize the first season he coached at Jackson State, it wasn't during a regular like fall semester like now. It was during the spring, like right after COVID, because people don't realize after COVID there was no football in the SWAC. So essentially, it was like spring practice, but it was considered regular season, and a few teams opted out. Alcorn State opted out. So as a result, Alabama State ended up. No, I take that back. Pine Bluff ended up winning the SWAC that spring, and Coach Prime played against Southern and Ladarius Skelton. I talked about him earlier, but I had to give him his flowers. He balled out. In fact, both him and John Lempley played well against Jackson State, and they put the beat down on J State. They beat them like what? I think 34-7 in the spring. And the day of that game, I think we had like if I'm not mistaken, like maybe like a family reunion. Someone in the family had a birthday party. That was the first time like we had been out in a long time, because people were like just stuck inside because of the pandemic. And I think Pine Bluff won the SWAC that spring. And
they did.
They fired their head coach earlier this year that won the SWAC that spring. And it
was crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. The domino effect that Coach Prime, getting hired by Jackson, it was crazy. The domino effect they had, because a team, even though now we got to take the fact that Alcorn State was the defending SWAC champions, and they didn't play that spring, so that played into it. But the domino effect that he had across the SWAC, it kind of made schools fire their coaches, like Alabama State, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, well, not Alabama State, but Pine Bluff, A&M, but it also made other teams like Southern, step their game up, So it's going to be interesting to see, what's the aftermath of him leaving, some of these coaching vacancies that like you have like at Pine Bluff or some of these other SWAC schools. Are they going to, like I said, they're going to go back to the splash hire, or they going to, get somebody that's going to be there for a while,
Yeah, at this point, I believe it'd be in everybody's best interest in the SWAC, to get a coach who knows how to recruit and going to be there for a while. the splash hires, because this one right here, I don't. Can I be honest with you? I don't think. I'm not gonna say that because obviously, like we just said, Coach Prime uh, wanted to make if the situation presented itself or the opportunity, he was gonna move to a bigger school eventually. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not even gonna say that. Go ahead.
and that was our first conversation we had. We knew at some point he was gonna move on. It was just a matter of
Yeah.
when. But the thing about it is, I think, a couple of factors that we really didn't, factor in. Even though I know he didn't get a full recruiting class to bring in all these guys. The Coach Hugh Jackson hire, it's gonna be interesting to see how it looks a few years from now. But he struggled his first, even though Coach Prime struggled his first spring at J State. And hey, Coach, Hugh Jackson, he's struggling right now at Grambling. That's one thing we really didn't factor in. And then not only that, but I told you this at the beginning of the season. You know, Coach Prime, even if you hire like a Marshall Falk or Ed Reed, you know, most people that play in the NFL, they're not as charismatic as him. They don't have the personality he has. When he walks in the room, he could just light up a room. You know what I'm saying? I
Hmm.
mean, and I said this earlier. There's I don't care. You know, I told my mom this one day, and in fact, I've told this to players on my team in the past. There's levels to everything in life, and I don't care what you're doing, whether you a pastor or you a prostitute. And I hate to be harsh with my analogy, but there's levels to everything. People gonna be at the top level of this, and people are not gonna be as good. And I think in terms of splash hires for SWAC teams, like he's at the upper echelon because most people don't have his charisma
No.
and his smile and his and light up a room the way he does and as personable as he is. I think probably the only NFL player that I can kind of see that's even in his realm of that might be Ray Lewis. Might be.
Ray
But
Lewis. Yeah.
yeah, and even Ray Lewis, he's still not Coach Prime. So if you're looking for a guy that's gonna be able to go out and recruit like him and do some of the things, I'm gonna give you an example, right? I know he wasn't the caliber player Coach Prime was, but look at Stump Mitchell. Stump Mitchell, in certain regards, he kind of reminds me of Coach Dooley. But, Stump Mitchell, to say he was an NFL coach when he got hired at Southern, man, that was a terrible hire. I think at least 5 former Southern players that probably would have been a much better hire than what Coach Mitchell was at the time. And, just going to get an NFL coach for the sake of going to get an NFL coach, even a guy that played in the NFL, all former NFL players aren't the same. Most guys not gonna have Coach Prime's charisma and his personality. Those things factor into it.
Yes, sir. They definitely, indeed, in fact, factor into it. I'm just eager to see how Coach Prime's going to turn around that Colorado program. Um, with, you know,
I wish him all the luck. I wish
Me
him all.
too. Me too. Me too. Cause he got cause don't ask, I'm gonna say to all who's listening, this is not gonna be an easy task at
Man,
all.
it's gonna be difficult. But I think, the thing we talked about earlier about Bishan McCray, but one thing you gotta realize, coaches won't bring in their guys. So I'm almost certain he's gonna get at least a handful of those players from J State to come with him. And we're not just talking about his sons, but we talking about some of the other players. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe a Travis Hunter,
Oh,
maybe
definitely, Travis. He gone.
maybe the Miller kid. But the thing about it is, you know, uh, we talked about like our first show. I don't know if you remember, but one of the things that Coach Nick Saban did before he left and went to the Miami Dolphins, once he left LSU, there was a pipeline from LSU to Southern. Players that were buried on the depth chart at LSU might have been fourth, fifth on the depth chart. They would leave LSU and uh, they would come across town and would literally walk right to the starting lineup at Southern. They would become an instant NFL prospect. And in addition to that, they would become first team all SWAC, potentially All American, and they would be a pro prospect. And one of the things he did before he left, went to the NFL, he blocked uh, players from going to LSU to Southern. Now that ban has been lifted, but the landscape of college football is completely different now. Players don't, they for the most part, most players don't leave Power Fives and come to schools like Jackson State or Southern, and that all kind of changed. It went back to where it was in the late '90s when Coach Prime arrived at J State. The thing we really not considering, if somebody like Travis Hunter transferred from J State to Colorado, unless they make some type of exception for him and Shador's gonna have to sit out for a season.
Yeah.
You know, unless you're a senior or unless you like a grad senior, we've had exceptions like Russell Wilson and Jeremiah Masoli, but for the most part, those guys have to sit out a season. So I think that's one thing we really never factored in.
No, we didn't. But like you said, and like we've been saying, it's gonna be interesting to watch how he does at Colorado. I wish him nothing the best.
No,
I enjoyed to see him coach and Jackson State and him. Don't get it twisted. HBCU football was already interesting without him. But he kind of put steroids to it.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
he,
mean?
he was able to shine a spotlight on HBCU football. You got to understand, even before his arrival, like Jackson State and Southern was a huge rivalry.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that he was able to bring a different spotlight to it, I mean, you had players that want to transfer from Power Fives to HBCUs. So, I mean, if anything, we just got to give him his flowers and just appreciate the time we had with
Yes,
him.
sir. We
And I'm
definitely
not
have to give him his flowers. Yes,
this
sir.
even as a Southern graduate, Southern alumni, a diehard Southern fan. You know, I was hoping he stayed maybe like another season or two. But at the end of the day, that'll be selfish of me. He got to do what's in the best interest of him, his family, so on and so forth. But I just appreciated the time he was here because, he made, because I've told you this in the past, bro. But at one point, like especially like the mid to late '90s, in terms of attendance, and they pointed this out yesterday during the SWAC championship game. Southern and Jackson State, like every other year, there was 1 and 2 in attendance. One year to be Southern, and the next year to be Jackson State. The reason why Jackson State, you know, usually, you know, except for the couple of years Southern beat them out, the reason why they have more attendance than Southern is because on a week in and week out basis, in Veterans Memorial Stadium in Jackson, their stadium is bigger than AW. AW Mumford Stadium, when Pete Richardson had the program really going, it used to be full. Stadium used to be full every week, but they added that end zone section because it was so full at the time, and attendance has dropped off since then. But AW only holds like 30,000, whereas Jackson Memorial, Veterans Memorial, it holds like 50. And the only thing that really helps Southern is Southern travels well. Southern, if Southern plays against Alcorn, Jackson State, I know Southern fans right now, they're not going to go to none of their home games during the course of the season, but they're going to go to all our away games. They're going to go to the Jacksons, the Alcorns,
Right.
the Mississippi Valley. So Southern has a traveling fan base more than any other, team in the SWAC. So that's what helps Southern attendance, whereas Jackson State, they travel with their team also, but their home games is where they get their support. So that was always a big rivalry, even prior to his arrival. But it gave it a spotlight that it hadn't seen probably since the late '90s. Because Southern will be up, Jackson State will be down, or vice versa. The last time prior to yesterday that they actually played in this SWAC championship game was 2013, and Southern beat Jackson State in Malaga Stadium. In fact, Coach Odom was the head coach at the time. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Um, it's gonna be interesting, and I just want to tell everybody who's out here just calling Coach Prime a coon or sellout. That can be your perspective, but just think for a moment and put yourself in his position.
Yeah, yeah,
Just think for a moment. Um,
yeah,
and a lot of times, you may have to upset some people to make the right decision for yourself. Um, but like you said, we wish him the best. I enjoyed him coaching at Jackson State. It was very entertaining uh, uh, games and watching them athletes over there at Jackson State.
yeah,
Um, but it's time for a new chapter for Coach Prime.
yeah. And you can't help but respect that and give him props for that.
You have no choice to. You have
Yeah,
no choice to.
yeah,
Michael said Winston Watkins, 5-star, just committed to Colorado. I think that's that kid from IMG, right? From IMG, Florida. So coach already on the prowl.
yeah, yeah. And see, that's why it's imperative that he not coaching the Celebration Bowl. So from a recruiting standpoint, it's going to be imperative for him to hit the trail right now, and instead of focus on North Carolina Central, he needs to focus on, because that's one thing that didn't happen over the years. I remember at one point, like, teams would wait till after their bowl game was over, and then that coach would transition to the other school, and so on and so forth. But recruiting is so crazy now. Like, coaches have to, they can't they can't coach in that bowl game, and they have to leave as soon as they finish the championship game. Because, I remember the first one I really could think of was when Coach Tommy Bowden left Tulane and went to Clemson. And I've seen a bunch of people do the same thing over the years. I remember one instance, I don't know if people know Turner Gill. He was the head coach for Buffalo at the time. He left and he went to Kansas because he graduated from Kansas or whatever. He was making more money. It was a big opportunity for him playing the Big 12. Like, his team laid down and quit for him the bowl game because they knew. And the thing about it is, you kind of know one situation. If you say, hey, I'm not gonna leave because Brian Kelly did that. He told his team at the University of Cincinnati he wasn't gonna leave, and then
Hmm.
he turned around and he ended up leaving. And they trashed him. And then Turner Gill was honest, and he told his team, hey, after this bowl game, I'm leaving and I'm going to, Kansas University. And they laid down in the bowl game and they got, beat up and they got smacked. So it's like, no win situation. Even like Nick Saban, when he left the Dolphins to come to Alabama, the reporter asked him, like, hey, I heard you leaving for Alabama. Are you leaving Alabama? I mean, are you leaving the Miami Dolphins to go to Alabama? He was like, what you want me to say? He said it multiple times during the course of the press conference. He was like, what you want me to say? He said, I want you to say you're not leaving and going to Alabama. He was like, I'm not going to Alabama. That was that Monday. He was on the plane flying to Tuscaloosa that Thursday. So in those
Yeah,
particular
that's how it is.
situations, in those particular situations, if you lie, you're gonna get raked over the coals for it. And if you
Hold
tell the
on. So
truth,
what you saying, Coach? You saying did Coach Prime do that?
no, 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 no. The point I'm trying to make is we live in a different day and age where, because you got to realize he did the smart thing. He just didn't address it at all. He said, I'm gonna address it after the game. But the point I'm trying to make is, this not like the early '90s where coaches wait until after the bowl game and leave and go to their new school. The way recruiting is now, and these coaches so cutthroat and this, that, and the
Yeah.
third. Like, you can't afford to coach in that bowl game. You got to go recruit now. So the fact that he was able to flip this kid who probably might have been committed to like the University of Florida, Alabama, or whoever, for him to flip that kid and get him to Colorado, it goes to show you that it was in his best interest to go start recruiting now for the fall. So that was the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, no matter what you say, you're in the wrong. Whether you tell the truth, whether you lie, but the point I'm trying to make is you can't afford to. He couldn't afford to hang around and coach the Celebration Bowl. He had to go recruit, for his new school. So that was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying now. But if all of that Jackson State squad is playing, they should beat North Carolina Central.
Yeah,
But it should be a
yeah,
good game because North Carolina Central is no pushover, especially that quarterback Richards they have. Richards has been balling all year.
Yeah, but if all of those guys don't play and some of these guys into the portal, I think it
It's
could be
gonna
a
it's gonna it's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be
yeah.
ugly.
No. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that even with a reduced State squad, Jackson State can't win. No, because I'm gonna be honest with you. You
Hmm.
know, I would favor most SWAC schools over most MEAC schools to be truthful. But even with that being said, it's no guarantee. If it's even just say we just gonna pretend like you had Southern in North Carolina Central.
Right.
There's no guarantee that Southern will be North Carolina Central, and there's no guarantee North Carolina Central will be Southern. So that's all. That's the only point I'm making.
Point taken. Point taken. All I'm saying is, if they don't play at full strength, even with their backups, North Carolina Central is going to be more than capable of making the upset. That's all I'm
Oh yeah,
saying.
yeah, 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 yeah. They definitely gonna be capable of an upset. If and you and I talked about this, in one of the shows past. It's the Celebration Bowl now, but at the time it was the Heritage Bowl. I mean, it's the
Right.
same bowl. They just changed the names. And Southern has played multiple times over the years in that bowl. We went to one where they played against South Carolina State and they won. They won the SWAC. They won uh and they won the Celebration Bowl. I mean, they won the Celebration Bowl. It was Heritage Bowl then, but they didn't win the one double A. I mean, they didn't win the Black National Championship because the MEAC sent two teams to the one double A playoffs that year, and whichever team, I think it was Howard Hampton, I can't remember which one it was. They only had one loss, and they lost to like uh, a powerhouse in FCS one double A, and they ended up winning the Black National Championship that year, and they got to a point where interest in the Celebration Bowl, it had, started to but more than anything, Coach Richardson said he was tired of the best team in the SWAC was playing against the third best team in the MEAC, and even like as much of advantage the SWAC team had at the time in terms of talent. Those MEAC team, they still was making those upsets. So that's why I say when you in a bowl game of that magnitude, basically it's a 50-50 game because you got a champion on one side and a champion on the other side. And especially just say you a Southern and you playing against a North Carolina A&T or South Carolina State or even one year, Southern barely beat Bethune-Cookman. They had been hearing the whole year, oh, Southern gonna beat y'all, Southern gonna beat y'all, Southern gonna beat y'all. And it's me, a team like, all right, we're gonna show them. And they pretty much they go and they strap it up, ready to play. And Southern wasn't ready for what was coming back at them. And it took them a while to get going, but once they got going, they was able to get the win. But the point I'm trying to make is in a bowl game of this magnitude, it's basically a 50-50 game. And if you don't bring your best game, you're gonna get upset just the way Jackson State did last year.
Yeah, like against South Carolina State. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, sir. But thank you for taking your time out of your Sunday for joining me, Coach. Like always, appreciate you, brother. Um, Good luck to Coach Prime. I definitely don't think you'll sell out, brother. So definitely good luck to you over there in Colorado. Um, anything you want to say, Coach, before we get out of here?
First of all, salute to everybody in the chat, everybody that came through on this Sunday evening and showed us some love. We appreciate y'all. We appreciate the few subscribers you have on your channel, bro. The subscribers I have on my channel.
Yes, sir.
All love. And shout out to the awesome and amazing LDBC.
Yes, sir.
Follow 7 Sports TV on my channel, Coach 67 Sports TV here on YouTube. You can catch me on Coach 67 Sports TV on social media platforms, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter. Y'all have a blessed and phenomenal evening. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Y'all be safe out here. Appreciate you guys for joining. Michael said Colorado gonna be 12-2. Okay, well, definitely we'll see.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. I really do. For Coach Prime. But y'all have a blessed Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Y'all be safe out here. Thank you guys for joining.